obviously on the corporate side and really the challenges over the many decades within cyber on how awareness has really grown and the need for it to grow over those years. But really there has been that growth and epiphany on really making that transition from cyber aware or security awareness to cyber culture. So I'm looking forward to having the conversation with everybody on that.
Thanks, Michael. Right. Mohsen?
Mohsen Azari, I'm with Walmart, leading the InfoSec practice for Walmart Canada. So I've been in the technology field for about 25 years or so in various different capacities. The InfoSec, the way I see it, is the practice of making sure that our environment, our society and community are safe. So what we do to actually achieve that goal, a few years ago, we started a journey of identifying awareness and training and education as being sort of a human firewall. So what I mean by that is we look at the awareness as another aspect of the big portfolio of InfoSec, and making sure that each element, each member of the community and the organization actually plays a role into that safety and security of the organization.
Thanks, Mohsen. Michael Ball.
And I'm Michael Ball. I don't know whether I'm proud to say or scared to say that this is my 30th year in information security. Started off in technology side, firewalls, routers, that sort of thing. Moved into the corporate governance world 20 some odd years ago. Stood up the first practice at Aviva Canada, and then was instrumental in standing up the practice at Manulife 15 years or so ago. And exited the corporate world about 5 years ago to go on my own. As a virtual CISO, look after a bunch of small SMBs across many verticals. So we're finding that the awareness has nothing to do with what vertical you're in. It's all the same game.
Thank you, Michael. We'll go over to Salman.
My name is Salman, and I work for Travelers Canada as an IT risk professional. And I'm half of the experience of Michael. I've been doing security for 15 years. And when we started security, it was all about awareness, educating leaders why security is important for the organization. And I'm still doing the same thing. The audience has changed, threat landscape has changed, but the objective is still same. Educating other people why security is important for the organization. In Travelers, we do that for compliance reason, but it's beyond that, and that we will discuss today.
All right. Last not least, Jeff.
Hi, I'm Jeff Reichard. I am on the product strategy team with Veeam Software. I've been doing IT also for about 25 years in the tech sector. I started out as a backup and AIX admin at Stanford University, and moved from there into implementing SANS and disaster recovery solutions, and then backup and high availability solutions at my last couple of positions, and teaching other people to do that. The reason that I've been in the data protection space for as long as I have is that you get to have really interesting conversations at the intersection of technology and protecting data and achieving compliance and business outcomes. And on the Veeam product strategy team, I talk with customers about their requirements in that space, and security is certainly not least among those, and compliance, and then try to drive their mission feedback into Veeam's development team.
Thank you, Jeff. All right. Now we're going to dive into the topic. I'm going to start with something which is very near and dear to me. So in light of the recent increase in breaches, you no doubt that the CISOs are under pressure and are also dealing with limited budgets and, most importantly, limited skilled resources. Now, if you were to highlight a single critical success factor when building a cyber resilient culture, what would that be? We'll start with Mohsen.
Yeah, so one of the things that we find that really works is the idea of getting the associates involved as InfoSec ambassadors. So we are challenging and presenting to each associate the idea of the InfoSec and security is not just defined and limited to one team, and you basically sit at your cubicle and make sure that somebody else is actually taking care of the problem for you. The critical success factor for us is that we want to enable each associate by giving them the right tool to actually have a partnership with the InfoSec, so each one of them would play a role to making both on an individual and also on the organization level, make it a better and safer environment.
I'll actually get into Travelers Canada, given that you guys have two very high-profile brands, and then we'll dive into our CISOs, so to hear about their perspective when they jump from SMBs to SMB. So over to you, Salman.
Yeah. So this is very important. What Mohsen mentioned, you need to have champions and ambassadors. But I think, over a past of a number of years, the experience that I have, if you get end users involved, you need to understand what their needs are, so you can customize your message to them. That really helps, because whatever you prepare, at the end, that they need to be consumed by them. If they are not receptive, they are not basically understanding your message, it's become difficult. So that will be one of the critical success factor for me, to understand what my audience need, who's my audience, and what resonate with them, and I convey my message around that.
Okay, thank you. We'll go over to Michael Castro.
Yeah, so on an enterprise level, security awareness and cyber culture, it really is a top-down approach that really makes the difference. For large organizations, a lot of that input and a lot of that power of the messaging really comes with the help of senior leaders. Now, when you look at small, medium businesses, you would think that a small company, handful of employees, might actually be a simpler process, but it actually can become more challenging. And really, there are two reasons. One is that in a small company, everyone is already working a mile a minute and already have the priorities of the job that is at hand to help this organization in the size and the capacity that they are. But there's also the fact that the other side of the house can be, even if you have senior leaders that are engaged and sold on the idea of cybersecurity, the message often either is we can't do it because we have to do other things, or on the other side of the spectrum, could have a boss that is saying, employees, you have to do cybersecurity, in which case the employees become very challenged on their capabilities and their priorities between work and where cyber sits.
Yeah, absolutely. So going on to that is sort of this blame and shame thing, right? So when you're in a smaller company, you feel like you have more of or maybe you do have more of a responsibility to the health and welfare of the company. And if you're not pulling your share, from a cybersecurity perspective, the onus is more individualized. You are the team typically.
Yeah, no thanks. So clearly here has to be a shared responsibility as well as a top-down support from the senior. From a Veeam perspective, Jeff, can you share with us some success stories around trying to build this in either a DR or business continuity, and where do you see when you engage with leaders when it comes down to their awareness of you have to have certain things in place to execute when the need comes?
So as a data protection vendor, as a backup vendor, unfortunately, we're frequently in the position of sort of closing the barn door after the horse is already out.
Mm-hmm.
I do not have a customer of any size that I've spoken with in the time I've been at Veeam that has not suffered from ransomware events, just as one example of cyber culture and the sorts of things people need to be aware of. And frequently, the response of organizations to that is to blame and shame the people who fall for spear phishing emails and to try to deal with this as a HR personnel problem. To an extent, you have to do that. You have to test. But a better way, I think, and my customers have seen, to build that kind of awareness is to get employees at all levels on board with any kind of digital initiatives that you're going through. Mm-hmm. Because if people think digital transformation or whatever, the move to the cloud or whatever the online initiatives that you've got going on are going to end up costing them their job or make them work harder, they're going to be very uninclined to add cyber culture and cyber awareness to it. Whereas if everyone's pulling the same way, it works differently.
All right, well, I'm going to move on to the next one. So we clearly hear there's, things that they need to do from top down, there's a shared responsibility. What do you guys see when you're practitioners and professionals and leaders in your organizations and working for other organizations? What do you see as the obstacle? What is it really that hinders what we need to achieve? We'll go to Michael here.
So the big thing is that individuals don't want to invest the time or can't afford to invest the time in an overall awareness program. The programs themselves, if you go out to vendors, the programs are fairly expensive, and it's something that a director of security or the CISO will roll out once a year. You know, so it's a spot in time that you're learning a little bit of awareness, and then a year goes by and you're sort of getting a refresh. So the big thing is making this contiguous and involving everybody in it, looking for ways of bringing all of the teams, all the lines of business together to help you build that program, as opposed to having an individual, one person, roll it out and dictate or enforce it on everybody once a year.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Once a year, we've got this October Awareness Month, and I've seen firsthand where it'll run for the entire month, and then it dies out, and then you just can't build that culture because you need continuity.
Because nothing bad happens the rest of the year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mohsen.
To add to that, you know, I touched on that on the success factor that we talked about at the beginning. So exactly like what you said, that idea of the notion of I'm a developer and I'm developing code, and security is not my job. Security is somebody else's job. That doesn't fly anymore. That's a big obstacle to actually make sure that each individual within the organization has the responsibility. You need to build that into your whatever project management process that you have. Whatever, if it's nowadays it's an agile process and you got an incremental that you go and do your projects, you need to make sure that at every level of your project management cycle, there is a presence and there is a cooperation and very close ties between all levels of, you know, the business, the coders, the developers, the infrastructure, all that need to understand that it's a partnership amongst all of them.
So I hear the DevOps to the DevSecOps. Looks like that's what should be happening more. We'll go over to Michael there.
Can I interject it for a
Yes,
second?
please, Balko.
So I think beyond DevOps, every line of business needs to understand what their specific risk is to the company and what they can bring to the table from a security and from a compliance perspective.
Yeah, and that goes back to the notion of the ambassador and the champions that we just talked about. You know, if you integrate that into each line of the business would not be too far away from the notion that we can actually do it. We are enabled, we have a partnership, and it actually works.
Okay, Salman, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I just want to tie back to the need assessment and what are the obstacles. So there are different things, because when we talk about culture, it's not within IT, it's within the organization.
Well
so you
said.
need to think about the organization as a whole. I share one example with you. We rolled out security awareness program in my last company. And the message I got from one of the operations team, who are basically call centers, we cannot spend 15 hours to take this training, or 15 minutes to take this training. And I said, why not? She said, okay, if I spend 15 minutes on this training, where shall I charge my time? And I said, okay, really, this is a problem for you? She said, yeah, I work by hours, and if I charge 15 minutes, I don't have any project, I don't have any customer. So I talked to her supervisor and said, okay, how this works? So she explained the way call center works. And that was really a problem, because if we don't understand the audience and we are creating something that will go to them and we expect them to abide by, we expect them to implement that, it's going to be a really problem for them. So that is the obstacle. So I understand, you know, from the organization perspective, we need to understand who is our audience and how we can reach to them, and what are their challenges that we can solve through our program. Within IT, because we are the one who are leading this initiative, I think buy-in from the management, buy-in from the IT leadership, and I go beyond that, buy-in from the even board of directors and the senior management needs to be there. Because if it is not there, it becomes really challenging to get the budget and the resources to implement the program. So I see one way is to implement, to design and enforce the program. Other way is where somebody has to take the program. So obstacles could be from both sides. So we need to address that as a 360 angle.
Yeah. Okay, well, this takes us to I'm going to now connect this to in cultures that should start thinking about consequences. So what are your thoughts on consequences that CISOs should pay attention to as well as encourage in their work environments? And these could be both, either positive or negative. So Mohsen, you want to start off with some consequences there?
Sure. So the way that I like to approach awareness and training is we would like to focus on the positive consequences rather than negative. So what I mean by that is, we do all kinds of campaign. We do phishing. We do coding, testing, and all that. So if there is an error that is made by somebody, we don't want to, take up the stick and start, beating them. What we do, we actually encourage them. We provide them with some material, with some, more education so this behavior would not happen again. And guess what? After they, human beings, when they usually tend not to make the same mistake twice or three times. So after the second time and third time, if they understand, the consequence from what the partnership that I mentioned from a DevOps point of view, this consequence can potentially go into an e-commerce site and can cause a lot of damage. They will actually pay attention on the second and the third time, and by the third time, that problem has already been fixed.
Yeah. Okay, Michael Ball.
So I'm looking at a program where it sort of blends the old school unionized, so when there's a problem on the assembly line and somebody brings a solution forward, they get a reward, and the whole team building thing. So we've got bug bounties where, if I develop a piece of code, somebody outside can assess that code, and if they find bugs, there's a reward. So internally within your own teams, if you know of an issue, a security issue of some sort, rather than demonize individuals or keep silent, bring that forward. If it's a valuable solution, give them a reward. Rather than blame people for talking about insecurities and shushing them up, reward them for that.
A reward can take many shapes. A reward can be recognition in front of an audience. Reward can be, attending to a CISO panel when the CISO actually pats you in the back and says, hey, great job done. So that would be a good positive feedback that trickles down to the entire organization.
Yeah, you know what? I definitely would like to hear Salman's perspective on working in a very highly compliance insurance sector. What would your take be on positive, negative consequences? Are there no negative consequences for, running an operation that is highly compliant?
Thanks, Sonny, for asking this question, because I want to talk about compliance and non-compliance. So working in the financial sector, we've been audited 365 times, 360 days in a year. So we have been bombarded with a lot of requirements and regulations we have to follow. Security awareness, if you see the audit checklist or the compliance requirements, security awareness is in every one of them. So if you don't comply with that, or you don't have security awareness program and you don't complete, that will be a non-compliance. So there will be a negative consequences of that. Means if you are listed on a US stock exchange, or you have to go through a SOX compliance or OSFI compliance, and you get as a finding, that goes directly to the board. So it reflects bad on you as a company, and it reflects bad in the industry as well. So from that perspective, yes, there are negative consequences. If security awareness is part of your audit or a requirement and you don't perform, it will hit back to you as a reputational impact.
Well said there. So what I hear really is it's all about creating a culture where you can reinforce values and tie them to a reward system, and that works very well, looks like in Walmart's case there, Mohsen, right? All right, so I'm actually going to open it up to our audience here. You've heard our panelists here from brands like Walmart and Travelers, as well as SMBs. This is your opportunity. What's burning question there that you would like to ask? Just be open. We've got some catch boxes around. Any hands?
Yeah.
Any burning desire?
If they don't ask question, you will ask question from them.
We got a question here? All right.
How was lunch?
Looks like
question way over here.
Well, that's fine. Let's keep learning then.
Question is on the left side there.
Oh, there is one? All right.
All right, thank you. Just a question. How would you measure the success of an awareness program? How would you measure? What would be the metrics that you would measure to know that you are successful?
I can answer part of that.
All right, Mohsen, sure.
Yeah, so there are many metrics that you can put together to measure the success of a program. When you do coding, there is testing that you do, and based on the number of faults and bugs that you find, you basically track that, and on the second run that you do with your awareness campaign, you track that again. On phishing campaign that you do, depending on the how difficult, and you actually have to rate that, because sometimes all phishing campaigns are not equal. Right. So you have to understand the difficulty level of that phishing. Then you measure the response and the report, who clicked and not clicked. So those are definitely metrics that you can follow and understand how well your awareness and training program works within the organization.
Yeah, I would add to that for a lot of organizations, measuring the success of training versus the actual ROI can be challenging. And to Mohsen's point, phishing is a very good example. It's very easy to measure the metrics on the success of testing your staff or how well they click through or don't click through. For me, from the enterprise level, a lot of the metrics came from the actual actions that employees took when there was a threat. So using phishing as an example, as much as you have the controls or the technology to protect you, at the end of the day, phishing emails still get through. And the success of your training can somewhat be measured by how many manual or buttons. We'd have a button in Outlook, for instance, that people could report phishing. How many times our employees would click that button when they got something that got through our defenses, or how many times is an employee sending a question to the security team asking them something related to security. And so it's that piece that goes beyond the actual test pattern, but actually that real life scenario where you're seeing your employees uptick, hopefully, on their wanting to participate and actually do something when they're not necessarily being tested for it or being rewarded for it.
So that's an interesting question. How many people here have implemented the report phishing function in Office 365? Very few.
I see a couple.
Very few. Take a look at it, guys. It's there. It's something you can implement.
And it's something most likely you guys are paying for.
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay.
It's worth noting, everything that we all read a lot about machine learning and AI in the press nowadays, but everything that we're talking about here is not machine learning, it's human beings learning, it's culture learning. Point that was made yesterday a couple of times that's worth pointing out. One of the things that anyone involved in security that cares about it as an executive should look at is retention. Because it does no good to train your staff if your work environment is such that you're losing people constantly and you're in constant churn. Any of these programs are directly linked to your retention and to employee job satisfaction, so that you've got a stable body of people to bring up instead of always starting from zero.
And compensation as well.
Right.
Right? So do I have 30 seconds?
Please, yeah, go ahead, yeah.
So I went into one particular company as a virtual CISO, and within days of coming, the lead security analyst came to me and said his performance review was coming up. For 3 years in a row, he's asked for compensation equivalent to his peers in other companies. And for 3 years in a row, they haven't been able to do that. And so I tried to champion that. I went to HR, I went to the teams and tried to champion at least giving them some level of appropriate compensation. It was denied. He left the company, and the person that we ended up hiring back in behind did not have the 10 years of legacy training within the company that he had, didn't have the loyalty, and basically was hired at the rate that this gentleman was asking for.
Yeah.
Right? So I just... Yeah, take care of your people, take care of loyalty, and make sure that they're compensated appropriately for the job that you're asking them to do.
And
Thanks,
they will
Michael.
take care of you.
They'll take
Just
care
want
of
to
you.
complete the sentence. Yeah, they will take care of you.
Absolutely.
You take care of them, and they will take care of you. I just want to add one thing, Sunny, here. So when you talk about measurement of culture, it's not a technical thing that you can do. So I would say contribution from the staff in terms of awareness activities and support from the management, and even approval from the board and the management on the budget are some of the key indicators that you can say my program is working, and we are getting support from the staff and from the management. Because if, like as Michael and Mohsen mentioned about phishing, less IT incidents, how many times they report to IT, these are some process changes or the technical things you can measure. But when we talk about creating a culture, we are not measuring only one thing. We are not saying, okay, this is a tool working or not. This is how we are changing the environment in the organization, how we are changing the attitude and the belief of the people. So it's really hard to measure, but contribution from their side and support from the management, I think one of the key indicators.
And building on the phishing examples that we've heard here and as well from the audience yesterday and today, so we all have heard that human factor is known to be the weakest link. Now, we can argue, yes, 90% of the successful data breaches stem from phishing. Now, what are your thoughts as a leader in the communities you work in or the organization you work for when you are conditioning that negative connotation of human is the weakest link, whereas culture should, contrary to that, culture should say, well, I think our people are our strength, and they are really our last line of defense if you train them. What are your thoughts on that? Like, we've all heard about human being the weakest link, and that really is a big part of building a culture. So, Salman?
I can start with that. When we always say humans are the weakest link, I don't believe on that, and this was, I was having an argument with one of my colleagues, like why we call them as a weakest link? Why don't we call them as a strength or the last line of defense? Because if you talk about security or IT, when we talk about how we can complete that, how we can implement, we talk about 3 Ps or 4 Ps. We need processes, products, place, and people. So people are part of the strategy. People are part of your roadmap. People are everywhere in any project that you implement. So they are not the weakest link. They are the strongest link. They are the last line of defense. You just have to mentor them. You have to train them. As we mentioned earlier, if you take care of them, they will take care of you. So they could be the last line of defense for you as long as they are properly mentored, educated, and trained, and then retained as well.
Yep. We have to be mindful of the fact that these are, by default, we are not malicious people. We commit errors. We don't know of a process, we don't know of the way the tool works, and sometimes we run into erroneous situation and something doesn't work, and we click on a button and something potentially bad could happen. So we are as good as, it's almost like nourishing your children at home, the way that you bring them up. There are various factors that can contribute to an individual doing the right thing. And one of that is providing them with the right tool, right education, and things that actually matters to them. When we are talking about awareness and training for associates, we have to start relating those training to their individual and to their daily lives. It cannot be just while you're here at work, if you do this bad thing, that bad thing will happen. Once you go home and then you're completely off the hook. That doesn't end there. So they have to understand. So whatever that happens, and that's how we actually have to tailor the training and with the focus that gives them a benefit of things actually can work for you both here and also at home. So there is no separation nowadays, to me, between the two environments anymore.
That's a very good point. So I guess organizations should really focus not only on training them for work, because you do take that same learning to home, pass it on to your kids, your family. Yeah. That's a very good point. Thanks, Mohsen.
I'm a sports fan, and I always like using the analogy of the goaltender in a game of hockey. So a lot of times when, I won't mention any more local hockey teams, but a lot of times when a team would lose, they'd look at the goalie and say, oh, the goalie had a bad day, they let in 5 goals. But the reality is that the goalie is just part of the team. And in the world of hockey, had the forward players not scored some more goals, had the right winger not messed up his pass, had the defense person not made the zigged right when they should have zigged left, then that goalie wouldn't have been put in a position where everything hinged on their capability alone to change the course of that goal and that game. And so, I would almost turn around to say, traditionally, we've mentioned how humans and the people are the weakest link, but there's a human factor in there. And really, we should be turning it around to say, really, that our people and our staff should become the strongest link, and they should be making up the gaps in the indifference to where technology is unable to make those changes, or where machine learning or algorithms or horsepower of the tools that we have not been able to stop that threat, phishing being an example. And it's come down to the capabilities of that user being presented with an email that's in front of them that has gotten through all the other courses of controls and now sits in their inbox. And we really should be focusing on, and that's part of this positive reinforcement, on heralding and rewarding the good behavior where that employee is seeing that and saying, yes, it made it through all that. It probably is good. However, there's a chance, and I have the power to not click on that, or I have the power to report that email and make that difference and make up for the weaknesses that are kind of inherent or have led to this email landing in their inbox.
Especially to continue the hockey metaphor, because the puck is going to get through, we all know, right? Malware is going to get through, bad things are going to happen. So the team can either be weak or it can be strong. So they need to work together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I make an observation on how we do our training today?
Yeah?
So typically, and correct me if I'm wrong, but typically, once a year, 4 times a year, whatever, you subject your employees to either a PowerPoint deck with a Survey Monkey or some form of interactive video or something, and it's sort of a point in time, okay, and then you sort of walk away. If you take a look at how lines of business engage their employees in overall training, they've got a whole different routine where they'll basically take the team out and do team building exercises. So you go away from the building, or you pick somewhere and you spend an entire day, not 15 minutes, but you spend an entire day building as a team, working together, doing tabletop exercises. Why can we not develop some information security tabletop exercises and run our teams through these as a game? And engage them and have them educate each other. Work out various teams against each other, and who can solve this the quickest, and whatever. Just turn it into a team building exercise where everybody wins.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Now, building on this, we have one side of the fence. We've got our users, or staff, employees, whatever you want to call them. Then we've got the other side of the fence, and that's our board and senior leadership. Now, I'm going to ask you guys a question around, in your roles today, in your experience, if you were to share a strategy or strategies around dealing with raising that awareness at that level. Yes, we've got amazing tools, we've got awareness tools for our employees, but when it comes down to raising awareness and reporting metrics to the board, how does that feel from your experience? Can you share strategies, and how do you keep reinforcing those? Because that's where that's where it matters, top down. So I'll open it up.
So I can talk about that. So like when we started information security 20 years ago, 15 years ago, it was our job to educate other people and tell them what is information security. Now this has been done by media. So thanks to media on that, I really say. Because if you see, if a board member does not know what is cybersecurity, then he's in the wrong place.
It's a topic on the board table,
It's basically on the board side. But still there is a job for us to do. So although they are aware of that, but what we can do, and that we have done in, like in my organization and with different organizations, I have done that. So we partner with the management, and we partner with internal audit sometime, because the internal audit, they have access to the board. They do go to the board on quarterly basis. So if we partner with them and say, okay, what are your findings? Are these findings related to culture, awareness, staff, talent? Can we bring this up to the board instead of talking about all the other business risks? This is one of the business risks that you need to discuss and bring to the board. So that has resonated very well. So this is one way to reach out to the board. Other thing, like boards have subcommittees. And one of the committees, risk and compliance management committee. We can start from there. It's a small group of people. We brief them, and they became our champion. Like the way we have champions in different departments, that committee become our voice. They become our champion, and they present us to the rest of the board.
Yeah, I'll add to that that there is, when we do the awareness and the training, it has to be tailored to the audience. We now have a huge audience going from the iGen generation, generation X, Y, all the way to baby boomers. So we have to be mindful of the way that we put the content in front of the audience. So that content is actually very important. What we need to do, we need to simplify that approach, that training approach. Also, at the same time, we need to have an ongoing, it's not just once or twice or 4 times a year. It has to be built into the product that we market, the product that the teams handle. At every level of there has to be a conscious decision and good training and tools that shows them how to do things the right way. Yeah. So content is really important.
Yeah, boards are interesting because they really have transformed over the years when it comes to cybersecurity. And I can say 15 years ago, when I was dealing with cyber incidents for a large energy firm, a lot of cyber topics never even made it to the board. Unless there was an actual breach, which were far and few between compared to today's days, the board didn't even know that there were cyber events happening within the organization. And as that progressed along, the board started to realize that things were happening, and the questions in front of the CIO, if they had the opportunity to sit in front of the board, would be are we at risk? What's happening? Are we spending enough? And the typical CIO would throw out numbers in front of them and metrics on look at our penetration on endpoint protection, look how we're doing with patching. Very technical views that a board really wouldn't absorb or really care about and really wouldn't solve the answers if they had any questions to ask. Today, boards now look at 2 sides, and there are really 2 things that they're looking for from senior leaders, and I take this now from the enterprise perspective, because now I've sat on both sides, both as an advisor to boards and as a person standing in front of boards. One is that the board wants to have usable metrics that can help them really define what the risk is to the organization. Board members realize now that they have a duty of care around cyber. It is one of their risks on their portfolio that they have to worry about. So they need the leadership to really tell them what is the risk of cybersecurity within their organizations. And they're looking to the CISO, the CIO, head of security, whoever it is, to really be able to tell them that in words that they understand with some metrics that are measurable and absorbable. But the other side is that boards are starting to bring in some savvy people onto themselves. And we heard that before. The mayor of Ajax was talking about more boards bringing in security people, whether it be advisors or board members. Boards now are starting to actually ask questions that are specific to cybersecurity upon those leaders or the audit committee or the CIO. And leaders in the organization have to be ready to respond to those. The board members now are smart enough that when they ask questions specific to cybersecurity, they're wanting an answer that is actually going to answer, not something fluffy, not something that's buried in some statistics that don't answer the question. So organizations and professionals like yourselves really are being put in the position to, actually very positively, to actually finally be able to say, yes, I have something to say, I have a message to say, and knowing that the board member might actually understand what they're saying.
Oh, thanks, Michael. Michael, well, I'm just going to go over to you. From your experience working with SMBs and organizations, right, when you firsthand are the person that can actually distinguish between work cultures, from your experience, when you're working with senior leaders and board members at that level, what would you say that in your experience has been visible to you clearly that you distinguish one organization from the other? Is there anything you can highlight from there?
So at this, what we're talking about now as far as security awareness and overall culture, across the verticals, I'm not seeing an awful lot of difference. So I'm seeing difference in the training that individuals have, in the tooling that they've got on site. The problems are all the same. Now I will say one of the I'm not sure whether it's fortunate or unfortunate, but one of the reasons that a virtual CISO is brought into an SMB in the first place is not proactive. The only reason to be proactive is if that company's either going to be acquired or they've got a cyber insurance requirement. Typically, we're brought in because of a breach or a ransomware event. So they've already had that event has happened, and so they're highly attuned, highly aware of the problems, and then we go in to help them mitigate and build the culture. But as far as getting an understanding, it's across the board, it's the same game.
Yeah, no, thanks. I'm going to go to Mohsen here. Mohsen, we had a conversation earlier behind the scenes here around adding fun to cultures, and that seems to be coming as gamification seems to be, we've seen some awareness programs that are trying to build gamification into. Can you share from your experience or from Walmart that something that works and our audience should think about?
Please.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, there is the variety of approaches and different age group that they participate in the awareness campaign. So a couple of things that we do every so often is this idea of catching the fish. So we present the associates with certain type of email, and they basically have to identify which one is good and which one is bad. We put them through some fun of just typing the password and see how fast it can be compromised. So when we provide that, and the associates actually get involved. They like to try things that are a little bit fun and that they can actually take home with them. We tell them about the way that the Wi-Fi, and they can simple things that they can do to secure the Wi-Fi at home. And so they actually once they leave the booths, they kind of feel enabled that it's something positive that comes out of that, and they kind of feel that the organization cares about them both on a personal level and on the organization level.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share some gamification scenarios or examples that seems to be working for their existing environments or someone you've worked for? Okay, well, we'll move on to the next one, and that one's a burning question, and I'm sure we've had different sessions all along. We had some yesterday around. We all have heard about the cybersecurity skill shortage, okay? And there are things that organizations do internally to build that workforce, cross-train. From your experience working, I will put this to Walmart and Travelers, what are the strategies internally that you guys are trying to encourage cross-training from IT, risk, privacy to come on board and assist and build that workforce, which seems to be where the struggle is? Mohsen, you want to start?
Yeah, going back to that, the initial discussion we were talking about, we need to break down the barriers. We need to make sure that we enable the associates. We kind of need to go, away from that old, mentality of, I'm working in my own silo and I'm doing my own things. So once we bring the new associate and we want to promote the culture and we want to, get them into doing the right thing, we start taking them to orientation that takes them to different side of the business. We take them through privacy, we take them through what's actually taking for legal, what's actually taking for different business unit, marketing. So it's to give them a big portfolio, that things that they would know the contacts, they would know who they need to talk to, they would have mini orientation from different side of the organization that would basically tell them that it's not too far from you, it's just at the length of the hand away. So we give them that tool to start with.
So Michael Castro, I'm going to come to you. So organizations that are bigger and able to build these capacities around risk and privacy, what would you say when you're working with an SMB and they might not have a fully formed risk and privacy? how are organizations dealing with cross-training internally? Like I know for a bigger organization, there would be all the speciality, and then for SMB, it's more around the generalist IT. How's that cross-training working?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously small companies have their own challenges, and you know, it's every unique aspect that a large company has is probably either not done in a small company or is done by a person wearing many hats. You know, from an SMB perspective, a lot of the companies that I've touched on or talked to really don't have a security person available, let alone somebody who's ready to champion security awareness. I think the key though is that it's with the right culture and starting to build that culture in, whether it be a large company or a small one. If the cyber culture starts to grow, you can easily go with a small company that has 100 employees. You can instantly go, or not instantly, but grow to a path of having not 0 security practitioners, but having 100 security practitioners. And it's about embracing security, having everyone be a security ambassador to the organization, and everyone really taking to heart the value of where cyber plays not only in their own role, but on the success of their organization. And small companies who are really invested in the success of their company, and you really see that in a small company over a very, very large company, they want to do what's right because they want their company to succeed, they want to grow with the company.
Personal pride.
Yeah, and there's pride. And if cyber is a part of that path to growth, I find that they will start to turn the corner with the right culture to being a part of the solution instead of part of the problem.
Well, thanks, Michael. Looks like we're under 2 minutes here. I'm going to open it up once again to the audience. Looks like we have a hand up there in the back. Can we get a catch box there, guys?
I don't even see that.
Yes.
Those lights are bright.
I know, very bright.
Hi guys. Sorry, but I have 3 questions. Yeah, so question number 1 would be in terms of the skills shortage, how much of it is a skills shortage as opposed to a functional deficiency, right? Because sometimes it might be something that can be automated, or it's not really a skill you need to hire somebody for where you can automate that process, and is it being counted as a skill in terms of that shortage? Second question being in terms of policy and compliance enforcement, what have you guys seen been the biggest challenge to getting that done in your business? And the third one would be in terms of implementing business rules, right? Do you think that when you're hiring somebody, because at some point cybersecurity is going to become, it has to be a culture, right? And it might have to start, like right now, it's a difficult time to get everybody to buy into that culture. The awareness has to happen over and over again. You train, you assess, you train, you assess, you train, you assess, you train, you assess over and over again, because things will change. So the question I'm asking in the third question is really, is it going to be something where when you hire somebody, there has to be some sort of requirement that you have to be at least a secure computer user, for example, before you even get into that business? You know, like for example, the DoD has requirements before you can work there. Is that going to be something that's going to be widespread to every business or not?
Thank you. So I guess we'll work it backwards. We'll be able to answer this in a few seconds, hopefully.
Let me see if I can quickly touch on one of the questions. From a compliance point of view, one of the challenges that happens in an organization is with many different teams, audits, and then different standards that coming your way, there are times that you're subject to a SOX, to an ISO, to an NIST. So there are many standards that you'll be subject to actually do make sure that different side of the business are compliant to certain standards. So the challenge is to actually bring it and use a subset of those, use sort of and this is what we are trying to do, to use a parent of kind of a compliance framework, and then whatever side of that, instead of asking the same question 10 times, ask it 1 time and then plug it back in, because the same controls that potentially you will apply on the NIST would probably be discussed in the ISO standards as well. So if we can integrate all that under one umbrella, I think that would go a long way.
Thank you, guys. Time's up. I really want to thank the panelists here for an excellent and exciting session here, and the audience for taking part. Thank you. All right, guys. Cheers. All right.